I grew up in a section called Gray's Ferry, which was part of West Philadelphia. You know, West Philadelphia was divided into different sections according to your income. I was from Grace Ferry. It was a changing area when we moved in. It was a mixed area that changed to an all-black area, but most of the people were homeowners that had good jobs, or a job with a vocation, I guess. Well, my mother was a very strange woman because she was a woman that kept to herself, but she was a research and chemical engineer, and I think she got that job because of the war. She had studied chemistry, and when they were looking for women to take over jobs, if the men went to war, she got to be working in a chemistry lab, and she ended up being a research and chemical engineer. And right before she died, she was doing nuclear research. My father was a chef, and they had their own restaurant for a while, but he always was working in high-end restaurants or for institutions where he used to bring home pretty good food. But I think during slavery, there were people that were mixed who were what we say, slave masters' children that lived in the big house, and they learned to read. They learned trades. They were cooks. They were undertakers. They were chefs. They were butlers or maids. And the people that worked in the field were usually the people straight from Africa. So when slavery was over and the people moved north, the people with trades felt that they were better than the people, house niggers and field niggers, you know. So it was whatever you were raised in that. And my father was a chef, so he had a trade. So we were not well off, but better off, you know. But I wasn't included in the society. And until I went to dancing school, did I really realize that? At that time, all the schools in my neighborhood were segregated. And, you know, it was the time of segregation and separation. We're talking about 1934, 35. When I went to school, in fact, until sixth grade, my school was all black. My first mixed school was junior high school, but my elementary school was all black. At school, there was a ballet club, which was all white. And my dance teacher, who was my gym teacher, invited me to the ballet club because she thought that I should be in the ballet club. I don't think she was thinking of color. I think she was thinking of ability. So when I went to the ballet club, I was the only black girl there. And this was before the Dolores Browns and the people from West Philadelphia High School. But there was a tradition at West Philly where Mrs. Lingenfelter, who was the ballet instructor, who was a member of the Littlefield Ballet Company, when she graduated, she took gym because there were no opportunities for dancers. So she was a gym teacher who taught dance. So when I went to the ballet club, I just was like, okay, why am I here? But I felt the challenge and stayed. I didn't really like ballet right then. I liked the challenge of thinking that if they can do this, I can do this too, because everybody looked at me like I didn't belong. And I found it easy to do point work. Half the time I didn't know what I was doing, but I had a friend in school, a white girlfriend, who would get to school early in the morning and teach me before ballet club, so that once I got to club, I would not be completely ignorant. So when they started doing terminology, I knew what they were saying. So when I got to Sydney, I knew a little bit more than the rest of the girls. And then when I was looking for a school to study, I went to all the schools downtown, and all the white schools weren't taking black youngsters. And so my mother remembered that Sydney was a ballet dancer with the Esther Marie Dorsey School, and that I had gone when I was 7 or 8, which I didn't remember. But the Sidney Marion building was located in the African-American community itself on Broad and South Street. Well, I know that I used to get to school early, and Miss Sidney, as we call her, would teach Miss Marion what she had to teach in her class. And she would, in fact, she taught Miss Sujet's daughter her first dance solo, and Sidney was the ballerina. And I think that even though they both went to the same school, you know, every school has their featured, and Sidney was the featured dancer. And I think when they separated, then Marion, you know, pursued ballet more so than Sidney, because I think Sidney felt she had it. We all had on point shoes, and we shouldn't have had on point shoes, but we had point shoes on, you know, and you struggled. And some of us found it easy and some of us didn't. But a lot of us were exposed to ballet I felt that Sydney was the better ballet dancer, the better ballet teacher, but she didn't have, as the old people say, the gumption to move forward and push people and reach out and do more. I think she was satisfied with what she knew and what she could teach and what she could give. And whereas I would say Miss Sujet wanted to do more and expose her dancers to more, and I think she wanted to be more credible, and Sydney was just satisfied with what she knew and what she could do. And then she was, I said she was a nurturer. She would pull you into her family. She would pull you into her circle. And you always felt a part of family there. And I still feel part of her family. And even after I left and Billy Wilson left and Betsy Ann, who was the first black woman to dance in the ballet at the Radio City Ballet, because she was fair, when she left, Sydney didn't want us to leave. She wanted us to stay. And, you know, we wanted to go. We wanted to do more. And I think that was the difference with Marion. She wanted to push her people. I was taking the money in the office, teaching, cleaning, teaching, cleaning, cleaning, and teaching. I was doing everything, because then that way my mother didn't have to pay. I always thought, as I said, when I went to Sydney's, coming out of the high school, I knew a little bit more than the rest of the kids. So I had the opportunity to be instrumental in encouraging and coaching a lot of the others. Well, I was invited to take classes with Anthony Tudor when he was teaching in Frankfurt at a school there. A girlfriend of mine Ginger told me that he was teaching. So I was really the first that I saw there. And then later on, a girl by the name of Jerry White came. After me, I took Billy Wilson there. And then after I was gone, I left. Then Dolores, John, and the rest of the people of color that had the opportunity to study. But I was the first one that walked in the door there with him. Ginger said, come. And it was her aunt's school. You know, of course I wasn't feeling welcome, but he welcomed me. He welcomed me. Well, he was an American. He was English. He was an Englishman. And he probably didn't have that American feeling of superiority, you know. He told me I looked like a dog at a fire plug when I did Attitude. You know, I'm like, I thought that was horrible, but that's kind of his humor that he would say. You know, and he'd hit me in the chest, say, I bet you I did that before your husband gets to that, you know. Dancing in Les Sophie, I was surprised that he asked me to be in it, but of course he had to put Jerry in it so he could balance one black on each side of the stage, right? And I've taught that to my kids because that was the first ballet I ever learned, you know. And dancing with the Philadelphia Orchestra on the Academy of Music stage was to me incredible. I just like, look at me, wow. But after the review, you know, and I never saw the review. I was told that they said the ballet was fine except for the flies in the buttermilk. So I assumed they meant, and when Jen told me, they said, they're talking about y'all. You know, I'm like, okay. By that time, I was in love with ballet, you know, and I was in love with Mr. Tudor. I loved ballet, the feeling of doing accomplishment, of learning the skill, of learning the technique. I remember when we were learning the Sleeping Beauty ballet, none of the white dancers would be my partner. So Mr. Tudor was my partner. So I thought, you know, look at me. You know, Sleeping Beauty pas de deux with Anthony Tudor. The other girls were mad. But I only got to be his partner because no one else would be my partner. I loved about him the fact that he was just open. He did tell me, if you want to have a career, you have to leave Philadelphia. My mom said, no, you don't leave till you're married. You don't leave home, you know, till you're ready. And I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to dance. And when I took Billy Wilson there, he told him the same thing. Billy went to New York and got bells ringing. He was a man. Then he did Broadway for years. That era, girls didn't leave home and strike out on their own. You know, not right then. This is talking about 1949? No way. My mom and dad, they weren't having it. 1951, they allowed me to go because I had a scholarship to the Catherine Dunham School. You know, so then I would go, catch the train and come back, but I didn't move away from home. And I knew there were no opportunities for me in a ballet company, you know. William Senna was my teacher. He taught me private lessons because I couldn't take classes with his school. And they always say it was because of the parents, not because of themselves, that they could only give us private lessons. And, you know, I was in deep competition with Dolores Brown. She was the ballerina at Judamar, and I was the ballerina at Sydney's, and we were always trying to out-ballet each other. You've heard of a group called Sister Sledge? Well, their mother, Flo Sledge, was a dancer, and she got pregnant. And one of my girlfriends was dancing in a nightclub in New Jersey. And when Flo got pregnant and had to leave, they told me they needed somebody to replace Flo. So you better come get this job, girl. You can make money. And that's how I started dancing in nightclubs. And I liked it. I liked it. I didn't have a job dancing anything else or anywhere else. And from there, we formed a group called the Savard Dancers. And we ended up in Montreal. And and then Cab Calloway hired. I've always got a job. I never had to audition or look for a job. I was always the girl on point. Mainly, I did most of my stuff with Pearl, Sammy Davis. I'm trying to think. A lot of the stars came over because I spent a lot of time working and choreographing at the Club Harlem. So I got an opportunity to work with a lot of artists, Slappy White. You know, a lot of people came through that I had the opportunity. But I was lucky because I had an opportunity to dance with people who were doing top shelf. You know, I went to Vegas 3 times with Pearl Bailey, you know. So I went to the Riviera Club in New York with Larry Steele. So we always had good jobs. I wasn't doing, like, slimy jobs. I was working in good clubs. Yeah. But a lot of times, I was the only black dancer. And when I decided that I didn't want to travel and tour anymore, running around the country, I thought maybe if I opened a school, I could teach some youngsters. And the times were changing. Still haven't really changed, but the times were changing, that if I taught some black youngsters that someone could have the opportunity I didn't have, and that I should share what I knew. But for the first 6 years I had my school, I worked nights. I commuted every day between Philadelphia and Atlantic City for 6 years to keep my school open. I didn't have a company because that's what I set out to do. I set out to teach. I didn't know that I would have a company, but I say I'm a founder's. I have founder's disease. I look around, I see there are things that need to happen. I needed to have a company because there were no opportunities in the city for black youngsters who studied. So I said, well, maybe if I start a company that I can give them the opportunity to perform, they'll move out, move on. My first kids stayed with me 8 years before they moved out. They moved on to Ailey, which was a move up. You can't talk about prejudice and segregation if you practice it yourself. So if my company is all black, then I can't say, well, how come the white companies don't want us? So I have a girl from Nicaragua. I have, a guy with Puerto Rican. I have a white girl. And, it depends. Sometimes I have 4 Puerto Ricans, It depends on dance ability now, but I don't think that I should have an all-black company and talk about segregation. I can't. It's reverse. I was given an award by the Regional Dance America, and I went to get this award, and there was one black girl, the 800 little white girls. I'm like, where are the black girls? And the lady said to me, we don't know where to find them. I'm like, well, there's 45 dance schools in the city. You can't find a black kid to come be a part of this? So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll find them for you. So that's when I said at IBD, we should have an audition for black girls who want to do ballet and invite black teachers and that have students to bring their students. And then let's invite the companies that say they can't find black dancers to this audition to see if maybe they can find someone to train, hire, teach, find somebody. So that first audition, much to my amazement, we had 101 girls register to come. IBD is International Association of Blacks in Dance. I started that in 1988, and it's 39 years old. 15 companies represented themselves across the country to look at what, okay, we want to see what you're going to do. Talk about black dance. So we showed them their girls were ready. I said, okay, let's see what you're going to do with this. Because you claim that you want a diverse company, you want a diverse world. What are the excuses? Because I expected them to say they didn't see anybody, they weren't up to par, they weren't qualified, they didn't have the right body shape, oh, they were too dark because they don't fit in. I expected all those things that I'd heard over the years. So I was hopeful. I was hopeful that if they found one, just one, would have made me happy. Well, the first audition was amazing. I mean, Joffrey Ballet gave, like, I think 20 scholarships for students to take classes. Some of the girls got hired. Some of the girls were given. I think the levels were different, just like any audition. There are people that shouldn't have been there. There were people that were there that were growing. There were people there who should have been hired in somebody's company long ago, who were in their 20s, you know. And you know, at the end of 20, you were talking about downhill. And they're still looking for a job. So I think there were many different levels of dancers, and I think the thing that for me that was amazing, that a lot of the artistic directors of the major companies looked for levels. And I think that they weren't all looking to hire, but they were looking for dancers that they could train or give an opportunity for more training. But I think unless there are more opportunities, unless there's a dance theater Harlem, there's no place for our youngsters to go. They can leave there. That experience. It's the same with them. If you come to Philadelphia, you can go to Ailey. So if you go to Dance Theater Harlem, then New York City Ballet can look at you, or Oregon Ballet can look at you and say, there's someone there that can do this. But if there's no place for them to be seen, if there's no place for them to go, what are they going to do? Get lost? They end up being somebody's mother. I was hoping, and I said it, that maybe sooner or later we won't have to do an IABD ballet audition, that they will have their own auditions. I think Dance Theater Harlem's doing one, aren't they? An audition. That other companies will hold their own auditions where black girls feel welcome, and that they know they have an opportunity to be hired. But that we don't have to do a separate one.